Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Options Mentor. Are you ready for some football? I know I am. Unfortunately, I got to wait one more day. This is Sunday, and the Vikings aren't going to win until tomorrow night. Yes, Skol. All right, but I bet I know what you are ready for. You're ready for this market to quit messing with you every Friday expiration. I know I am. And I have a trade this week I'm looking at that I think could help us with some of the volatility, the IV that's being held up in short options that you may have on a Friday versus the longs. So I'm going to show this in SPX today, and I'm also going to show it in SPY because it's a little bit expensive. But in SPY, of course, you can dial in your costs a lot better since it's 1/10 the size of SPX. So the market, of course, last week went up, set an all-time high on Friday, and then backed off pretty quickly. And looks like the market thought, okay, that's all we can get out of this until we indeed do get the 50 basis point cut that they think they're getting. A 25 basis point cut sounds fairly assured, even from things Powell said. The 50 is a bit aggressive, but I believe they feel since we had about 50,000 less jobs created than were predicted, the market's hopeful that the Fed will see them as the economy's in tough shape. You got to cut rates. We'll see if that materializes. Now that Fed rate decision will be a week from this Wednesday, so it won't be this week. It will be next week, and we're going to try to take advantage of that fact because this week we do have two bits of news. We have a PMI on Wednesday, a CPI on Thursday. So those are inflation numbers. Of course, they'll be important to the market since the Fed will consider inflation also in anything it does, but it will pale in comparison, of course, to what the Fed actually does, which is now quite questionable between the 25 and 50 basis point cut a week from this Wednesday. So let's get started here. I'm going to show you first the SPX. So here's the concept. So the problem has been that if they have a report or something happening that week, say the Fed announcement next week, they hold up the IV in your short so high that you can't see any time decay until after that event. And some weeks, like the one we just finished, they held it up for the jobs report, which doesn't happen until Friday on expiration day. So we're going to try to take advantage of that fact because what you want in the calendar, you want your long to keep its IV or go higher, while the short doesn't gain any IV or goes lower because the less IV it has, the easier and cheaper it will be for you to buy back. So if we look here on the screen, what I have is selling an option, the 64.70, a little below where we finished on Sunday. On Friday. So you'll have to look at that Monday and see where we're at. Maybe put something on at or a little below the money. You can put it on above the money if you feel this bullish about the week. But what I did is I sold the 12th and bought the 17th. Now, the VIX is a little bit higher than I'd normally like to be 5 days wide. However, the 17th is what? That is the Fed announcement day and the Fed press conference. And by the way, this option doesn't expire until that's over. So there'll be no relief in the IV in this option, the 17th, until after the Fed rate cut decision, if there is indeed a cut. So that will mean that our long IV will certainly stay the same and most likely will climb all week, which would be good for us. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose that our short IV, after we enter into the trade, that the short, let's say we did these strikes here. If the 64.70 call for September 12th didn't gain any IV or very little IV all week long and expires on Friday, versus what if the long IV, the longs IV, the 17th 64.70 call, it has a decent chance of its IV climbing as the anticipation builds that IV all week long, and it could even come out, from some of these inflation reports. So if it would say gain 1 point in IV while the short did nothing, that's just one way. That's $122 of long Vega that you could realize in profit. It will, your P&L will fluctuate up $122 if that happened. So it could help us get out of this trade quicker. I think we have an excellent chance of being out of this trade certainly before expiration day, because all week long, this long's probably only going to gain in IV, while the short's going to struggle to keep up. So that's what I like about this trade. You put it on here. Now it is $1,335 as we're currently seeing the pricing here on Sunday. And that's expensive. There's no doubt about it. But it also means that if you say go for 10%, that's a higher number. So if you bought this at 1335, you could try to sell it when you had $130, $140 profit, or even sooner if you like. But I think that profit will build much sooner in this trade than it would normally, because the IV of your long certainly isn't going to be going down. Nothing that expires on or after the Fed rate decision on September 17th is going anywhere on IV except up, and it would very least stay the same. So that's the idea. So if you wanted to do it cheaper, we can look at SPY. Now SPY is trading here at 646. I modeled a 645 call. You could do it, like I said, at the money, below the money, whatever you feel like doing. And it's only trading at $443, excuse me, $1.43. As you know, everything in the option world is times 100, right? So you could buy one contract for 143 bucks at this price, and you wouldn't have a whole lot of money into it. Try to get 10%. Maybe if I paid 143, I might try to get 20, 30 bucks and get out. But you could also dial it up a little. Maybe do 5 contracts. Maybe you'd have about 700, a little over 700 in the trade. Try to get 70 bucks or so, but it would still be only about half of what you'd have in one contract of the SPX. So that's up to you, however you want to play it. I would say if you get up to 8 or 10 contracts in SPY, you might as well do the SPX, because that's going to be a rough equivalent of one contract. So that's my idea for this week. I think it's an excellent idea in that this long should help us. We won't have this problem where the short just keeps all this IV and the long does nothing. That will hopefully solve the problem for that this week. So let me know how this trade worked out for you if you do it. Do it on paper, at least follow along. I encourage everyone, if you've never done a calendar, to be doing them on paper. Don't start any option trading before you've practiced. That's a recipe for disaster. Option trading is tough enough whenever you have some experience, let alone when you don't. So do something either paper, or if you just a slight nibble would be doing a one contractor in SPY. Remember, the most you can lose is provided you get in and out at limit orders is what you paid for it. Don't ever use market orders in option spread trading. Make sure you only use limit orders so you don't get an incredibly bad fill. All right, so don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notify button here on YouTube. Check out all my links. Come and join me every day over at aramer.com. All the information is there if you want to do it, or follow my trade service. Also, my email's in there, theoptionsmentorspx@gmail.com. I do one-on-one private mentoring. If you'd like to know more how that works, what it costs, what we'll do with that, shoot me an email. Happy to talk about it. A lot of people have been joining in. I've had so many people join in just the last month. So it's getting very popular. I have a good rate going on. So let me know if you're interested in that. And I'll be back here with you next week with another edition of the Options Mentor. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.